Hi everyone, we've got a great video from StorageCraft on the OneXafe Solo today. It talks about what brought about its development, how it sort of makes small business data storage easy to implement for any MSP out there. You also get to check out the dashboard, see the features and how it all works. So without further ado, check it out.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Jared Burgess. I'm going to be running this technical deep dive into OneSafe Solo. Looks like we have everyone on the session, so let's get started. Before we get into the technology, a little bit about us as a company for the people that don't know us. We've founded in 2003. We're a global company, really focused around the data protection, the data storage and data management play. With 100% channel focus, yeah. So we only transact through people like yourselves, and one of the big things we did is that we got an investment into the company, which allowed us to start working on through new technologies. So now we can start having this total business continuity platform. So you can see here, we have our ShadowSafe cloud services and cloud backup platforms. We have our new technology we'll be talking around today, which is our Solo product. But we can also go up into the big enterprise around our OneSafe object-based scale-out storage solutions. So the evolution of Shadow Protect, yeah. So a lot of people know us from the Shadow Protect 5 days, which then evolved into SPX, which really gave us this really strong Windows agent backup, yeah, which was really out there and leading the technology. And recently we've actually released our ShadowSafe and now our OneSafe Solo, which allows us to start playing into a different space. So when you start looking at it, is Shadow Protect and SPX is still out there, still full feature product offering, which has had years and years of reliability behind it. What we're finding now is that with ShadowSafe and OneSafe Solo is it's giving us an exciting opportunity to go and look at new customers and different use cases, and allowing us to really play into spaces where potentially SPX was looked down on, which is these large virtual environments, and also it allows us to be a little bit future-proof. So why ShadowSafe? So one of the big things is the world has changed. So SPX was really playing down into this really big physical world, but the world's moved on, yeah. So now everyone's, majority of people are now virtual. People are starting to look at IaaS and PaaS as a service, which means we have to start changing the technologies we use. So when you start looking at it, the first thing is SPX was really built around this monolithic architecture. So every component in the solution had its own UI, which was fantastic from the technology and the outcome it provided. But the big one is that it basically didn't scale the same way. So, from a ShadowSafe and a Solo logic, we had to start looking at around a single UI and then having these replicated services around how do we now do backup, how do we do replication and smaller components. The other big thing that we had to start looking around, and one of the key things we started looking at was around how do we change the way that we communicate. And we don't actually have to have everything in their little bubbles, so we need to be able to have parts of applications being able to talk to everything. So we started leveraging this whole idea of the gRPC communication. But in the product, yeah, we had to start to look at how do we preserve the core value, yeah? So what were we known best for was this whole agent-based protection. And we were some of the best in class around VSS integration, around getting consistencies of our backups with an efficient backup footprint. We had fantastic technology around virtual boot, and we had to preserve these as part of our product. So as part of our evolution into Solo and into ShadowSafe is we had to really look at basically at our product we had. So when we looked at the product, the key component that we had out there wasn't our UI, wasn't our SPX services, but it really was our STC BSM snapshot driver. So that we had to retain. Then we had to start looking around and saying, it's great with Solo and ShadowSafe. Let's start building these new backup services and how we can get them interact better. Then we had to start looking around, what do we need to start looking at? So one of the big things is that when we start going into this single UI is how do we start managing things at scale? So when we start bringing in this idea around an SLA-based data protection, we had to start getting to rebootless updates for our agents. we had to start getting tighter integration into our STC cloud so we can start giving this end-to-end solution while still getting back to the logic of what we're known for around the instant recovery in milliseconds. Giving that information view back to people around what's actually happening from a dashboard and giving proactive detection of errors and alerting. And we sort of did that. So when you start talking around an SLA-based workflow, this is where we started getting into around we can now start creating a policy which is going to drive the way that we back up from a frequency. It's going to target around what our retention is. The other big for us now is that it's also going to start managing our replication. So we start simplifying down this whole process of we can set up one policy, but then start having multiple machines leveraging it, both from the duration of backups, the retention, then also the leveraging of replication into things like StorageCraft Cloud Services, which is really key around giving that end-to-end solution of being able to leverage that DR as a service, one-click virtualizations, which is then self-service back as an MSP that you can start delivering this end-to-end solution via this one portal. But the big one for us is we still get to be able to leverage that instant recovery. One of the big things we can now do inside of Solo and ShadowSafe is this recover from anywhere. So we don't care where the backup has been replicated to. So Solo and ShadowSafe will do the replication for us and allow us to instantaneously virtual boot off any of the locations. Now, whether that's sitting in STC Cloud, in AWS, in on-site, secondary sites, in a data center, doesn't really matter. Either we will boot straight off it. The other big one for us is that we will restore directly to on-prem primary storage. We don't have to do a secondary motion to be able to get that data back. The other big one that we had to start playing with was around how do we actually bring in these new next-gen capabilities. The key for us around there was to be able to get to agentless data protection. So when we start playing in big virtual environments, we don't want to have to sit there and manage multiple agents on every machine. So we started doing the hypervisor integration to be able to take a snapshot and then offload that work to be able to back it up. We had to change the way that we do our deployments, that we can actually now use virtual appliances rather than having to build machines and install applications across the top. We have to be able to get more data back into the organization around what's actually happening and, start looking at it from almost an SLA perspective. The other big one is the flexible licensing model. So we have to be able to look at it for, whether we want to be a perpetual, subscription, MSP. So they were the key components we had to drag into it. All while driving it back to radical simplicity around management. So the key for us is that how do we have one interface that will actually monitor and manage any customer of any size with as many sites without having to have multiple interfaces. The other big one for us then drove into around the workflows. How simple is it going to be able to recover? And we'll go through and do a couple of these a bit later on when we jump into Solo, is that, 4 clicks to be able to restore a machine. Being able to do a full restore of 3 minutes 15, So agent restore, 6 clicks, So it's all about this whole make it very intuitive around how do we actually start doing restores and processes. Big thing for us was around deployment flexibility, So Solo is based on ShadowSafe. It is the same product. So we have this whole logic of is that we can deploy ShadowSafe as an instance into a virtual environment using either Hyper-V or VMware as that hypervisor layer to deploy into. The big one we'll be going through in a lot more depth today and showing you is around Solo and how we don't have to deploy anything on-prem and we can literally level whatever we want to be able to do around that and have it all managed and hosted external to us. Big one for us also in the MSP world is licensing simplification, We now have one SKU. If you want to leverage Solo or ShadowSafe, you literally order one SKU. From thereafter is that's then a true-up process of, so if you want to deploy another agent or you want to back up more virtual machines, you start protecting them. A true-up process happens at the end of the month where you are then billed for what you have utilized. You don't actually have to keep going through and do this whole license management. Big change for us is host-based backup. And so I think this is where we really start driving into this whole simplification. So in VMware today, we have the whole thing. We don't need to deploy agents for backup. The great news is Hyper-V is coming soon. Our target is June. From then on, we will not have to use agents to be able to back up any virtual machines running on the Hyper-V hypervisor, which will be a huge game changer for us. But getting back to the reason why we're here today is Solo. Yeah, so Solo was really built around how do we fix the challenges around BDRs that are running out there today. So one of the big challenges I hear from most people is what size do I build a BDR? How's it going to scale with my customer as their data grows, the number of virtual machines they grow? How do I make sure that I make the right choice for it? The other big one is that people don't want that whole lock-in logic of turning around and saying is, if I buy a BDR device off a manufacturer, is that I can only ever use their technology, I can only ever use their hardware, their disk, and I'm locked to that. Then we're also then turning around and saying people the other way that says, well, you know what, to get away from it, I'm going to go and build my own. Then they get into this whole logic of is that they then become a whole engineering division around how do they actually go through and build that. So where we've sort of changed that game is that we've built a device which is going to be managed out of a one system, so it's all cloud managed. You get to log into your own private tenancy to be able to control your customers. Solo can actually sit there. It can work against multiple ways of machines it can protect, whether that's Hyper-V, SXI, physical, vCenter. But the great thing is that it can leverage any type of storage that you want to utilize. Yeah. So whether you want to go direct to our cloud, internal drives, USB drives, we have this whole flexibility of you get to choose what the destinations are, all while tying it into this whole logic around our cloud services. So if we actually look at the device itself, so here's some quick hardware specs. So one of the things you actually understand is this machine is not built to be a BDR. We are not going to be virtualizing machines onto this. You'll notice here is that it can actually take a 4 terabyte drive internal to it, so you can actually plug an 4 terabyte SSD drive in there, and then that will actually become a local repository. We can leverage SCSI, NFS, SMB, or USB drives. So one of the machines I'll be doing a restore of today is sitting in front of me is literally got a 4 terabyte USB drive. But the big thing around it is that you get that flexibility around how do you want to leverage it. So when we start looking at the capabilities of Solo, so Solo has taken the componentry of our ShadowSafe technology and literally embedded it onto a hardware appliance. So it's literally its key feature of what it's meant to be doing is it's the storage target. So every backup we're going to do in a site is literally going to be taking that data and then being the conduit to where does that data get stored. It's also going to be looking after a remote replication, including to HTC Cloud. You can set up if you're an MSP and you want to hold long-term retention of off-site storage, you can get this replicated into your own DC as well. The other big thing it's going to start doing is start enabling around how do we start doing our restore process. The key feature around it is we've also built into it is around how do we start building this to be able to do a fast deployment. So around as soon as you plug this thing in for the first time, it's actually going to call home. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to go and register itself with onesystem.storagecraft.com. And this is really around turning around and saying is, hey, it's going to advertise itself as a device that is available to be leveraged. It's going to allow us to go and back up directly to cloud, so we can actually take a backup of a machine on-prem. Rather than having any storage on-prem, we can write it straight out of StorageCraft Cloud. So these are some of the key features of what it enables. But when we start looking at the ease of deployment, now this is probably the bit that I think is the key for it is it literally is an order and ship process. So you guys will go through, you place an order. It's going to go from the partner to the disti to the client. You can ship it to yourself. You can ship it directly to the customer. That's up to you how you want to order them. But the key process is connecting and powering the box on. So it's plugging in the Ethernet, the power cable, turning the machine on. If that is on a DHCP network, it's going to grab its own IP address and it's going to register itself out to the one system in the cloud. Once it's registered in that cloud, it's then going to broadcast itself for something that the MSP can then go and claim. Once it's claimed, you can then start configuring away your backups. The big thing that allows us to be able to do, that is to have that flexibility of each customer can have the same device out there. They can be backing up all different types of environments to all different types of storage. But the key is that we're going to be managing it all out of a singular interface. Yeah? So one of the big things you can see in the bottom right is OneXafe Solo. So one of the things you're going to see over time is that we're going to be transforming all of our products to leverage this new one system, .storagecraft.com. So cloud backup will come in, the DRAD services, ShadowSafe, on-prem potentially will come in, and our OneXafe storage appliances will all start being managed out of this centralized platform. So the key to us is, is that the device is built to be future-proofed. Yeah? So this is why it's not built to be a BDR, because BDRs need to change over time. Yeah? It's a function. You'll notice there is that we have no hard limit to a 3 to 5 year warranty. Yeah, so our thing is, as long as you're paying for the service, is that the process of warranty is included in that. RMA, we can literally redeploy, re-ingest it, reconfigure it, and get it going through with a 24/7 support. So one of the things I want to actually do is actually get you guys and actually show you what it actually looks like. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. So this is a one system. Now, so this is, I've logged in. Normally, as you log in, you would basically get a new device. We would literally come in. We would create a new site for a customer. So we'd add a site in. It's very simplistic. It's just a name. It's a name that would be relative to you or to your customer. Then the logic is that we would then go through. We would go through, and then we would actually go through and activate a Solo. So every Solo device that actually comes out, hopefully will actually auto-claim. So if it's on the DHCP network and it's broadcasting, we'd actually come in and we'd actually see a Solo device here that would be claimable. Then we can literally claim it. We assign it to the site we've just created. That means that our Solo is now actually going to be generated and sitting here ready for us to go and consume. Our next logical step is we would actually go through and we would actually add storage. If we used a USB drive or an internal hard drive inside of the machine, that would auto-provision. So it would probably take us about a minute. And then what we'd actually see is that the storage would actually come up provision underneath. If we want to add iSCSI, NFS, whatever type of storage we want to be able to do, we can literally add in an SMB share. We give it a name, a path, domain credentials if we need to use it to be able to configure that up. That would then allow us to go and create a policy. So a policy is logic. It's literally a configuration of how frequent do we want to run backups, where do we want to run them to, what's our retention. Yes, we still keep this whole logic of a continuous incremental forever. So we're going to take a singular base, and then we then set our retention around how many daily, weekly, and monthly recovery points we then want to have. The key bit that I really, really love is that I currently have replication set here to replicate the StorageCraft cloud. So with Solo, if every machine that's protected needs to be replicated into it, or you're going to be billed for it anyway, so you may as well leverage it. But if I want to set up a secondary replication point, I can literally turn around and say, cool, I now want to set up a replication to NFS, which is a storage destination. This could be a replication to your own DC. I then get to set the replication to say, do I want to do this every hour, or do I want to do it daily? So, we can start setting and triggering these replications to be different times, which is really neat and handy around when you want to start off-siting data. But the key one for me at the moment is, like you can see here, is that we have a policy that's running, but we actually have 20 machines that are being protected from it. Yeah, so rather than having each machine having their own configuration, which is what we currently do towards an SPX configuration, is we now set one policy. We can set that together. If we decide that we want to have a different policy, easy. We just add a new policy, set a name, we set the same details. We can still write to the same backup destination. The choice is ours. But then we can all manage it via a front panel where we're now monitoring all the jobs at the same time. So you can see here we get this nice little system activity across the top, so we can actually see this is an hour view. So at the top we can see the number of active backup jobs, the number of active replication jobs. You can see 34 minutes ago we kicked off 16 replication jobs. If we want to see what's active at the moment, we can click on the little active job. We can see we've got one job that's actually doing a backup at the moment and doing a transfer. So really, really simplistic. If we want to go and have a look at what machines are being protected, give it 2 seconds. So we can, get away from the warning. So we can actually go through and get a really quick, simple view around the health of all the machines, the last success. Where the real fun starts is around, this one's logging me out. What we're going to start doing is doing a recovery. So let me just fire up this remote desktop. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a virtual boot of one of my machines here, just to show you how simple that whole logic around it. Now if I can learn how to type. Joys of resetting your password recently. That's better. So what you can see here is I literally have a Hyper-V environment running. We have one server that is currently being protected. If I go and have a look in my policy, so I literally have a machine. This is my machine, or my policy that I'm running. So I live in Cronulla, so I decided to call that. So we're doing a local backup. We'll just edit this policy for 2 seconds. So we're basically taking a snapshot every hour. We're backing it up to a USB. Here's the retention policy we're doing. We're also running a replication up to the StorageCraft cloud. So very, very simplistic policy. I like the local recovery point. So if I want to recover something, if I want to virtual boot it, virtual boot's still a great technology to be able to go through and do testing around the validation of backups. So I always like to have local recovery point. USB drive's pretty simplistic to put that in there. But I still have the logic to be able to leverage our cloud. So if I go and look at this policy, we're going to see that we've got this machine sitting here. So what we're actually going to go do, let's go look at this machine. So one of the great things is, so with the protection that we're actually seeing here, so the first thing is now is that we actually get to see every backup on where it's actually located. Now, so this is something that previously with backup technologies is you'd actually have to turn around and say, okay, I've backed up to this location. I've now made a copy of the data. I've got to keep the logic of where is that data now held. Whereas what we're doing with inside of Solo is we're actually tracking via our replication around where we actually have that data. So you can see these ones, all these recovery points here are tracking that they're under my USB. Here we're seeing that we're having some stuff used under our DRAS platform, so these are recoverable points. The other one I was playing around with was using an AWS S3 storage gateway, and we can see right down the bottom of is that we have 2 recovery points that are sitting out there that we could boot off. So the big one we're going to do is we're just going to go through, we're going to turn around and go, let's select this backup, we're going to click on recover. So now we get the option around what type of recovery do we want to do. So by default, it's going to take us to a system recovery. With that, we get multiple options around, do we want to virtual restore with virtual boot or into either vSphere or Hyper-V? Do we want to do a full VM restore? Do we want to do an agent restore? So if this was a physical server that died, I can still boot off the recovery environment. It will then register back into one system. I can then get it to do the recovery, but the recovery will be driven out of here. If I want to do an individual file recovery, I literally click on the file recovery. What that's going to do is it's going to mount up that recovery point. Then we're going to be able to walk the environment. So here we can see, here's the drive. If I go on, here's the file backup. Then I've got a file here called restore text. I select that file, I hit next. It's then going to basically create me a download. So what you'll see, there is the drive, the folder, and there is the file. So, really simplistic. If you wanted to restore a whole directory, we could literally select the directory. It's going to zip the whole thing up and do it. Where I think a lot of the power is now is that we're going to restore back to virtual boot, to Hyper-V. First thing I want to know is what are we going to call this machine? So we can call this, let's not put anything there, let's call it STC demo. What it's also going to do now is it's going to turn around and say it's going to look for every Hyper-V host in the environment which is registered with the recovery agent. So I will go down and pick my one. We can set the number of CPUs in memory. The big key differentiator that we do in Solo and ShadowSafe compared to an SPX. So we now have this whole logic of migrate data to Hyper-V. We did the same thing with inside of ESX. Is that we can now restore the full machine. So we're still going to do the instantaneous power on. What we will also then do is, while that's happening, is we're going to do a backfill of the data while the machine is actually running. So it starts getting really cool around that I can instantaneously power the machine on, but I'm also going to have the full machine restored at the end of the process, so I actually get that whole physical restore done. I don't have to do dual processes. I'm not going to migrate that data back to Hyper-V. I'm literally just going to hit next. It's going to come back and saying, hey, this is the machine we're going to restore. This is what we're going to do with it. It's going to pick where to recover it from, so it's going to pick the optimal location. It's going to call it this. We're going to migrate the data back. One of the things I'll do in the background, we'll just make this a little bit smaller so we can actually see it do it. So we're going to queue that job. So what you can actually see is that machine STC demo has already been created. So if we just open this up, we can see that Windows is actually going through and starting to do the boot process. So we really are that quick and easy, and this is booting across my network at home. It's not like there's anything magic recovery point that's put into it. My USB drive, and it's coming off a 4 TB USB drive plugged into the Solo, and it's literally booting it into another machine that goes sitting beside me and bringing it up. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, if you have a question, there is a spot for you to be able to ask questions. So if you throw them in there, more than happy to answer anything as we go. And so there it is, it's booting up. So really around that whole ease. I think the question just went in. 2 seconds. Why can't I make that bigger? Where do you add VMs on the One System portal? Really good question. Let's let that little machine virtualize. If I want to go and add a new machine, what I would do, so if I integrate into VMware, I can literally go in and I can add a vCenter. So I can literally go through and add my vCenter host in there. It will go through and actually inquire against the environment and say, hey, give me a list of all the machines that you actually have. It will then allow me to go through and select them and add them to a policy. Deploying an agent is a little bit different. So one of the big ones we'll go to is we'll go to sites for 2 seconds. When I deploy an agent, one of the big things the MSI is going to actually do is it's going to want to go through and register itself. So the first thing I actually do, if I want the agent, I would actually go through here and go download the Windows agent. If I select on this, it's going to take me to here. I just take the MSI. The MSI is going to download. That then gives me my executable or my actual process to be able to install. It's going to want the details around sites. So the first thing it's going to actually turn around and ask for is the StorageCraft agent registration token. Excuse me. Then it's going to ask you for a site ID. So everything that we do is registered back to a site. So the key is there is that we give it those 2 bits of information. What it's then going to do, if we go back to our dashboard, it's then going to come up as machines that are not protected. So here we can see there's machines in here that aren't assigned to a policy. We've used a filter on here that basically says show us all the machines that are unprotected. I literally select the machine, I click on assign policy, and then I get to go through and assign the policy to it. Yeah. So that's as complex really as how do I actually add a machine into a backup. The next question is the data on the backups protected against general network visibility? That is, only agents can see it or can others be seen across the network? So the logic is it can't be seen across networks, yeah? So we're not actually broadcasting the data and the shares across everything. What we're literally doing is that the data is stored in the metadata is attached to the Solo. So from a central view is that we can see it, but it's not open yet. So it's not like we have open shares across the internet. It is all restricted down. We can actually set it so we can really lock down those shares, the same as what we could do with inside of SPX. But the biggest one is that our system can use it, that we can actually boot and restore across it. So I hope that answers the question. But if we go back to our little machine, we're actually still powering on. That's all right. Maybe I need to upgrade that machine one day. But that's really as complex as the policy is. Thanks, Mark. I did answer your question. But it's all built around the whole, how do I do things simplistically? The only thing I didn't show really was around some of the analytics we can now start doing. So we can start defining SLAs. We can start measuring compliance to it. So this is where basically looking at an entire site. You can see that we've got our machines sitting down there. We can start tracking around, did we have the right number of recovery points to what we said we're going to do? And we can start tracking the good, the bad, the indifferent. I like it because we can start pushing out time windows. If we see something that we think is a bit of an anomaly, we can start zooming in and saying, okay, what happened here? Oh, we had a bit of a climb off. We went from 100% down to 61. Cool, we started climbing back. Protection analytics isn't really set up. This is for the current day. But, here you can start seeing that, we actually had some success. We stopped running backups. But the nice thing about it is that we can also do this view at an individual site layer, yeah? So we can start doing our reports that we have this whole overarching view, like we do in this window. If we start looking at this view, this is a demo environment, but I can start going down and just looking at an individual site and say, okay, what's happening in Cronulla? Okay, Cronulla's happy. We can see it did a backup 4 minutes ago. We can start to see the data movement, or I can turn around and start looking at alternate sites. So if I look at Brisbane, I think Brisbane's been turned off for a while, so it's not going to be happy. Now, what we can see now is that we've got a communication area. I know that is because the device has been shut down. Next question is, if not using the local store with the Solo, how can I manage against ransomware or crypto? Look, so the logic is still going back to the data that you're storing should be, if you're using SMB shares, if you're using NFS shares, restrict the access down to what can actually talk to the data. One of the things I like around it is, is the way Solo's built with the replication of StorageCraft Cloud, is that we verify the communication and the data that we're transmitting. Yes, and then one of the big ones is if we're using the DRAS platform, we're actually going to be resubstantiating that machine in our cloud. Can you select data centers to upload backups to? So we can set so by default with Solo is that we will replicate to the StorageCraft Cloud. If you wanted to set up a secondary point, so say that you're the MSP and you want to hold all of your customers' long-term retention, so you want to hold 7 years worth of backups for them, and maybe some customers want to do it, yeah, you can. So I can literally go into my policy, I'm going to pick on my own policy here. So I can literally select this guy. When I go into replication, you can see this is DRAS. So I can now literally pick any destination that I like. So I can put it into GT. I could turn around and go, you know what? I will put it into Wisconsin. So I'm going to replicate this across the globe into the US. I want to do it daily, and that will then start replicating it through. So I'm hoping that's answering your question, Amish. But yeah, so we can literally, you just set up another storage location, and then you can basically just replicate anything you like to it. So any other questions? I meant for legal purposes. Amish, I might reach out to you afterwards. I don't understand your question, but I'll definitely reach out to you afterwards around what the actual legal purposes are. But look, so that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much for your time. The only other thing I was going to raise up is, if you've got questions, if you've got anything, please, let's continue the conversation post this. There is a program running at the moment around NFR units for MSPs. It goes into a one-off time fee. I haven't put the pricing in here because I've just noticed that we have people from multiple different countries, so we don't have it, but my logic is, reach out to your distributors, reach out to your StorageCraft sales professionals to be able to find out what that pricing model is. And please, the storagecraft.com/solo to get a lot more information on it. Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.